So hello everyone, welcome again to another live stream from Bone Studio. And today we are kind of feeling a place that belongs to Blender Today and Blender Hoy from Pablo Vázquez. But he is on vacation, so I thought, well, we can stream in Mondays, so you can keep coming to the live streamings in Mondays, and we will give the space to Pablo again when he returns. So, I'm kind of sick, so my voice can sound a bit weird, but well, it's okay. So what are we going to see today? I want to explain the differences between MantaFlow and Flip Fluid Simulator. They are both Flip Fluid simulators, both of them, but they are very different in some things, in some features. In fact, MantaFlow, it's a bit more general. It's a bit more. It covers more features than Flip Fluids, but Flip Fluids seems to be a bit faster. So let me start. You can download the Blender MantaFlow build in Blender 2.8 inside the Sebas GitHub. So you can come here and you can get this one or this one or this one. It depends on your operating system. Bear in mind that this is not the current version of Blender 2.8. So this is not rebased to Blender 2.8 beta. Probably it will be rebased sometime soon. I'm not sure. I have to speak with Sebas about it. But right now it's an old version of Blender 2.8. Let me drink a bit, like Pablo. Pablo, this goes for you. I hope you are enjoying your vacation. So, I've prepared this scene. It's a different one from the Spanish live streaming because I wanted to test it a bit more deeply. It's with a bit more complex scene. In fact, the glass of water is one of the most complex scenes for Flip Fluids simulators. Why? Because the fluid has to stay stable inside a volume that has a pretty thin surface of contact and it's all round. So it has to be at a pretty high configuration to simulate it correctly. I have simulated it with Flip Fluids already, and now I'm going to simulate it with MantaFlow. I will show you the Flip Fluids deeply later. So now we are in Blender 2.8. As you can see, there is no more smoke or beam or the old fluid. We just have fluid, and this is because MantaFlow is not just a liquid simulator. I said this many times, but I will repeat it as many times as needed. MantaFlow, it's a fluids simulator, no matter if they are gaseous fluids or liquid fluids. So this is the main difference with Flip Fluid Simulator, because Flip Fluid Simulator is just a liquid Flip Fluid simulator, at least for the time being. I don't know what are their plans for the future, but for the time being, it's just a liquid fluid simulator. So I'm going to start with this scene. I have a box. Please, I'm not going to remake this. This is a pretty simple scene. We have, let me show you. Okay, and I don't have here. No, this is cycles. Let's go to EV. Okay. As you can see, this is a pretty old release of Blender 2.8. So flip to top and let's go here. Okay, it's a pretty standard scene. We have our floor, and we have our cube that is going to be our domain. So I can move the domain. And we have everything inside this collection because this was set up in Blender 2.79, since this is the same scene I simulated with Blender Flip Fluids. So we have the cube that is going to be our domain. We have the glass of water, and this glass of water is it has a glass material. We can come here and enable screen space reflections, refractions, and I don't know why I'm not seeing through, but that's okay. Subsurface no, ambient occlusion yes. Okay, and this piece of geometry here is what is going to be our fluid. Okay, we are not going to use an inflow stream of liquid, but we are going to use just a volume that has to settle inside the glass of water. So that's it, it's everything. Now let's go configure the scene. So we get the cube, we go to effects, and we enable fluid. And as type, we pick domain. Okay, that's it. We change this to liquid, and this is another difference with Flip Fluid Simulator. In MantaFlow, we can decide if we want the limits of our domain open or closed. So I usually prefer to have the domain open, so if the liquid escapes from the simulation, it gets deleted. So I prefer to open all the sides, and that's it for the time being. Come on, join area and join area. Okay, and this one. And now we go to our glass of water or cylinder. We define fluid, and we define effector and collision. It's just a collider. Let me drink a bit, I'm dying. Okay, effector and collision. And now we go to our fluid, and we configure fluid, flow, and we can configure different types. So we pick liquid, and we have geometry, outflow, or inflow. So inflow, it's a permanent stream of liquid entering the scene. Outflow, it's what deletes the fluid that touches it, and geometry is just the volume of the geometry. So geometry, I don't need any sample substeps. Flow source, it's okay. Initial velocity, okay, and I don't need to use any texture. Okay, that's it. I don't need the floor. In theory, I don't need the floor because the water is going to be just inside the glass of water. So we will see some details about the fluid simulators right now with this fact. So we can check this. Okay, let's show flip particles, and we can bake data. And as I said, this time the streaming is not going to be problematic. It is not going to have any problems with my computer simulating or rendering or whatever, because I'm using a different computer to stream. But as I said, the performance of the fluid simulators, both of them, both MantaFlow and Flip Fluid Simulator, is not pretty good with many cores CPUs like the Threadripper that I have. So in this case, as you can see, it's not leveraging too much the performance of the CPU. I can let it be like this, or I can limit the number of threads that it can use. So, okay, I'm going to stop the simulation here to check if everything is going well. And so far, it's not going well, right? Let me, come on. Oh, maybe it's going well, but the particles are too big. scale, well, render as known, viewport display, points. Size 0.1 and 0.05. Bear in mind that this is at real scale, real world scale, so this glass of water is around, okay, in this version of 2.8 the dimensions are broken, but I can open 2.79 to check the dimensions, but it was around 7 centimeters of height. So let's check the simulation. It's not bad. Let's hide the geometries. It's pretty stable, even when we are at pretty low resolution, because we are simulating at 64 subdivisions. So we are pretty low resolution. And let me adjust this to 0.025 or even less, 0.01. Okay, that's better. So let's cancel the simulation and let's increase the resolution to 100 subdivisions. Remember to set up your CAS folder. Right now it's currently working, it's configuring it automatically without any problem, but I usually check this and make sure that everything is alright. So let's bake data, and meanwhile I'm going to open the other scene. So at first sight, with Flip Fluid Simulator, it seemed to be faster than MantaFlow. But in this scene, and I will show you that later with this scene, in fact, I think that it is slower than MantaFlow. Why? Because I had to crank up some settings from Flip Fluid Simulator to get a stable simulation inside the glass of water. As I said, this is a pretty complex situation for Flip Fluids simulators. So I'm going to show you, while MantaFlow is simulating, I'm going to show you the settings and the add-on from Flip Fluids, and I'll show you this scene later. By the way, 7 centimeters of height, the glass of water. So to install Flip Fluid Simulator, you do exactly the same thing as you do with any add-on. You just install from add-on using the zip file. So you go here, install add-on from file, and that's it. You will get Flip Fluids, you enable it, that's it. You have Flip Fluids enabled. And to create a scene with the Flip Fluid Simulator, it's exactly the same workflow like with MantaFlow. So let's create a floor. Remember applying the scale always. Let's create a cube. It's going to be our domain, but well, I can well, yes, let's create a simple scene. So our domain, 2 meters, 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters. Okay. And let's create just a UV sphere. That is going to be our main inflow stream. That's it. Let's apply the scale. That's it. So now let's configure, well, let's put a collider. Something like that, something, yeah, something like that. That's okay. Apply the scale, and that's it. Right, now to configure the different elements, we are going to configure the inflow. So we go here, we get, since we are in Blender 2.79, we get or old L-beam fluid simulator or old smoke simulator, but we get also flip fluid. This is the add-on simulator. So we configure this to inflow, and that's it. We don't need to do anything more. So inflow, that's it. Why? Because with MantaFlow we have to configure it as liquid or as gas. It depends on the kind of simulation you want to do. But with flip fluid simulator we just have liquid, so it's inflow. That's it. Now this is the collider. So flip fluid, and we have domain fluid obstacle. We have obstacle. We can configure friction. We can configure different things. We can put here 0.2, for example. I don't care. And you have an option that is to use export animated mesh, and I think you have this option here too. What does this mean? This means that I don't have to enable this if I just animate the transforms of the object. So if I move or rotate the object or scale the object, I don't have to export the animated mesh. In fact, I should not scale the object in physics simulations. But I can animate the location and the rotation of the object. And this is not needed at all, because transforms is something that is implicit in the object, so it's going to be taken into account by the fluid simulator. So this is for the situation when you have hello Angel, hello Pablo, and hello Simbrase. Thanks, Simbrase. So this is when you have a situation where you have, for example, a character with an armature, and this armature, it's a deformed mesh. So you need to export that deformed mesh at each frame, so the fluid simulator can take into account the shifting in the mesh for the emission or for the collision or whatever. So you have to enable this when you have a character with an armature. But not in the case if you animate just the object, the transforms of the object. So that's okay. Let's go to the domain, flip fluid, and domain. And as you see, this is pretty similar to L-beam and pretty similar to MantaFlow, because they are, well, L-beam is not exactly a flip fluid simulator, but it's similar to a flip fluid simulator, and MantaFlow is a flip fluid simulator, so this is pretty similar. We have our bake button, we have our grid resolution. I don't understand why they keep maintaining the preview resolution. Well, it could be useful when you have to do a simulation with a pretty high resolution, like 1000, and you need to preview the results at 200 subdivisions, for example. I think this could be the case, but in general, I don't use the preview resolution for simple simulation at least. So 100 as grid resolution is okay for this test. And this is the time the time part where you configure the speed of the simulation. If you use frame rate, make sure that you configure this at 24 frames per second if your scene and your animation is done at 24 frames per second. So the fluid is moving realistically, okay? So this is okay, and here you have a multiplier. So for example, you can freeze the liquid in time. So that's pretty straightforward. We have fluid cache, where the fluid is going to be saved. So this reminds me one thing. Before creating the domain configuration, save your file. And why? Flip fluid live test. And why? Because if you don't do that, as you can see here, it creates a relative path to my blend file, and I can make it absolute, and it's in the drive X, that is my work drive. So if the file is not saved, it's going to create the the cache folder in the C drive, in the system drive. So it would be faster because it's an SSD, but it will harm your disk space. So save the file before configuring your domain, or manually change this to your desired folder. So we have the fluid cache. I always make this absolute. You can make relative or make absolute as you please, but I always make this absolute. These other cache operators, etc., I'm not sure what is this for, but I don't care. I haven't had any problems with this. Fluid display settings. How do you want to see the fluid after the simulation is done? You can select none, preview, or final. So in my case, final, and that's it. Render motion blur. This is important because with MantaFlow, if we go to MantaFlow, let's check, we're at 72%. Okay. If we go to MantaFlow, what I enable here is to show the fluid particles. And I don't need to calculate the mesh at the same time that I'm doing the simulation. I can do the flip simulation. That is the biggest calculation time, the biggest computation time is taken by the flip simulation. So I can calculate the flip simulation with the parameters I want, and I can pause, I can reset, I can delete the simulation, and do several tests with the particles without the need to calculate the mesh. Because the mesh is an overhead in the simulation, and we are going to see that later in the flip fluid simulator. But in this case, in flip fluid simulator, you can show the particles, but you are going to be calculating the fluid surface always. So no matter if you want to calculate it or not, you are going to be calculating the fluid surface always. That's it. So this is if you want to calculate the motion vectors for the fluid surface, and if you want to scale those motion vectors. Well, we have here white water display settings, and this is when we enable the white water, the particles, the different particles, we are going to be able to access this, and we are going to see this later. So that's it. Flip fluid surface is just the mesh that is going to be calculated if we want to super sample the fluid surface. So we have a resolution of 65 in this case, 100 please. Let me save. A 100 size, 100 subdivisions, and I want, for example, it's like a subdivision surface for the fluid, but a bit more complex. So I can subdivide the fluid mesh as many times as I want. So for example, I can simulate 200 or a 400 mesh, but it's not going to be as accurate as simulating with 200 or 400 subdivisions, of course. Particle scale, if you want the fluid to be more tight or to be more thin, this is okay as it is right now. So it's okay. Fluid white water to enable the white water simulation. We are going to do this later with another thing in the add-on. Flip fluid world. This is important in the case you don't have real world scale units. For example, if I have this scene, well, we have our glass of water. Let's check. Shift space. And as you can see, it's pretty good. I don't know why this stays this way. I think that this is because we have our glass of water. Let's hide our cube for a moment. Okay. Let's show this as wire. And I think we need more resolution to be able to achieve this collision. And in fact, we can reduce the size of this geometry. So let's select everything and let's do this. More thin geometry and more tall geometry for the fluid. That's it. So let's delete, let's reset the simulation and let's calculate it again. Let's save and big data. Okay, let's go to flip fluids. So imagine that this glass of water that should be simulated as with a glass of water 7 centimeters high, it's modeled at 7 meters. Of course, fluids don't behave the same at different scales. So I need this to be able to adjust. Where is it? Okay, here. I need this to be able to adjust the scale of the simulation to my scene size. And we have here Scorpion 8182. Your red panel covers partially the settings you are. Oh, thanks, Scorpion. By the way, if I'm correct, he is the magician behind the fracture modifier branch, and he's the responsible for implementing it in Blender 2.8. So tell them to implement it faster, please. Do it faster, Scorpion. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome to have MantaFlow in conjunction with fracture modifier and with flip fluids add-on. It's going to be awesome. So let's go back. Thanks for the heads up. So I need the world size to be able to adjust the physics of my simulation to the correct size that I want to simulate. Okay, so in this case, I don't care. This is just an example scene. So 2 meters, it's okay. But I can, for example, tell this is 2 meters. This is going to be the same as if I disable this. But I can say that it is 0.2. So it's going to be 20 centimeters, for example. But right now, I don't care. 2 meters, it's okay. So gravity, if I want to use the scene gravity, and the scene gravity is configured like with fracture modifier. The scene gravity is configured here. We can change the scene gravity. But in the case we have different types of simulation going on, we have particles, or we have rigid bodies, or we have different things, we may want to put our own fluid gravity. So for this, we can change this to custom and change this gravity to a different value. But for the time being, scene is okay. Let me check how is it going. Let's pause. This is a great thing that we have in both simulators. We can pause the simulation, check how is it going, and I don't understand why do I get this kind of collision in the bottom part. I will have to ask Sebas for this. Okay, let's resume the simulation. So, gravity, viscosity, this is another difference with MantaFlow. The viscosity system inside Flip Fluid Simulator, it's amazing, it's awesome, it's incredible. It allows you to simulate, for example, melting wax. In MantaFlow, you cannot do so viscous fluids or so dense fluids. They can be somewhat like honey, but not too much. Not much more. Sorry, not much more. But in Flip Fluids, the viscosity system it's absolutely amazing, and you can simulate practically solid objects that melt in a different situation. So the viscosity system is one of the main advantages of Flip Fluid Simulator over MantaFlow. Ángel Agudo, Question: inside so much emotion, I lose myself. My English does not accompany me. Do you have a Spanish version of all this material? Yes, Angel. My latest streaming from the past week that was in Spanish was about just exactly this, just exactly like this. It was about MantaFlow and Flip Fluid Simulator. And since I'm sick, my brain is not thinking pretty well. So I'm not sure if this streaming is alive or not. I hope it is. Yeah, I think so. Okay. So yes, you can check it in Spanish in my channel. So viscosity, it's amazing. It's one of the main advantages of over MantaFlow for the Flip Fluid Simulator. Surface tension is something that is new in Flip Fluid Simulator. It's somewhat beta, but as far as I can see, it works pretty well. And we also have surface tension inside MantaFlow. Boundary friction, okay, friction with the boundaries of the domain, that's okay. Okay, Flip Fluid presets, let's check this later. Materials, advanced settings. And this comes the important thing. For a simple scene like this one, I don't need to crank up any of these settings. This scene is going to simulate somewhat fast and it's going to be okay. But for a scene like the glass of water, I had to crank up these settings so the speed of the Flip Fluid Simulator is more on par with MantaFlow, it's even a bit slower. Because MantaFlow by default, it's, in my opinion, it's more precise and it's more stable. While it was not in the past, but right now it's more precise and it's more stable. And Flip Fluid, it's stable and it's more or less precise. But for example, with the glass of water, I get weird behaviors in the limits of the glass of water, and I have water that is going out of the glass out of nothing. So it's weird. It's a bit weird. So we can enable adaptive time stepping for obstacles that is going to help with this, but I have to crank up these settings. So if you have something that is moving pretty fast and the fluid is not colliding correctly with the obstacle, you can increase the minimum substep needed. So for example, from 1 you can go to 4. You can enable adaptive time stepping for obstacles, and you can also lower the safety factor. And this is how many cells in the simulation the liquid can travel without taking it in a single substep. So if the liquid is going too fast and you have this set to 5, for example, 5 cells, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the liquid is going too fast and is going in one substep from here to here, and you have a collider in the middle, this collider is going to be ignored. So the safety factor is going to force the check of the liquid at its cell. So for example, if I go to 1, it's going to be much more slower than to 5, but it's going to check at every cell if the fluid has to collide with something or if it has to be corrected in any way. And this is exactly the same, but for surface tension. So they have 2 separate parameters for this. So multi-threading, this doesn't matter. Yeah, it's configured to auto detect. I can configure this from 1 to 64 to 8. I don't care. It's not going to leverage the 64 course at all. It has the same flows as MantaFlow in this case. Enable async meshing. This should help, especially with many cores, but well, I don't see this help too much. Pre-compute static obstacles, so it doesn't have to compute the obstacles on its frame, and reserve temporary grid memory. I think this has to do with system memory for the simulation, not much. Okay, and we have the debug panel. In the debug panel, we have two parts. The first part, it's about the grid. It's going to show us the simulation grid, so we can know at what resolution are we working. So in this case, we are working at this resolution. And we can enable and disable this at any time. We don't have to simulate anything to see this. But to enable fluid particle debugging, we have to enable this before we do the simulation. Because even when we have already a simulation done, if we enable that setting, we are not going to see anything unless we repeat the simulation. So this is important. If you want to see the particles, you have to enable it before you do the simulation. This is pretty cool, in fact, enable obstacle debugging, because it allows you to see the voxelization of the obstacle. So it's pretty cool to know if you have too low resolution for the meshing, for the voxelization of the obstacle, and it helps you a lot to avoid leaks, liquid leaks. And display console output, no, I don't need that. And that's it for debugging and advanced settings. And we have stats, and this is pretty cool. I'm going to run the simulation now. Let's pause the MantaFlow simulation. Come on. Thanks, Angel. So now the fluid is much more violent than before. But it is more or less stable. But I think I prefer, since I have the same problem in the bottom part, I think I prefer the other geometry. What's happening here? Come on. Okay, let's start the simulation here, since they don't leverage the course. I don't think it's going to be a problem. So let's bake. Another good thing about Flip Fluid Simulator is that we can use the timeline to see the simulation progress. And as you can see, here is the collider voxelization. I can see the collider voxelization, so I can debug it. I can stop, and I can go here in debug and disable obstacle debugging because it's okay. And I can reset and bake. Let's configure one thing. Velocity minus 4 meters per second, for example. Yeah, it's okay. So let's bake. And now in stats, as soon as it starts, you can see which part of the simulation is taking what time. So you can debug the simulation. You can see, okay, it's the mesh generation, so I can lower the mesh settings, or I can increase the mesh settings because my time per frame is okay. You have an estimated time remaining for the full simulation, so it's great too, and several things. So this is pretty cool. I think this is pretty cool, and the memory that is taken, the memory in disk as cache. So let's go here and let's go to undo. Where is the undo? No, this is not correct. Okay, here, undo history and frame change, resize. Yeah, this is okay. I prefer this size for the. So it's exactly the same as we have in the Flip Fluid Simulator. So let's check this, and why not? Let's simulate with both simulators at the same time. So we are simulating with MantaFlow and we are simulating with flip fluid at the same time. This is fun. And check this! The CPU is in much better use. It's great. Is this available for physics problems? What do you mean with physics problems? This is a flip physics simulator, so I think you could use it. But this is more for visual effects and such things. I think the simulation is not totally correct. It's more like an approximation. It's enough for the eye, but I don't think it's totally correct for physics. So let's check our flip fluid simulator. As you can see, we have the mesh, and this mesh is subdivided in flip fluid surface. I'm using 2 subdivisions, and the simulation is pretty cool, right? Let me stop this. Meanwhile, we have MantaFlow simulating, and I don't know what happened here. %. Okay. So let's go back with flip fluids. So I have my simulation until the frame 23, but since the domain is completely closed, it's going to fill the volume. And this is why I prefer to have the domain open. And I've been unable to find this option inside the flip fluid simulator. I think this is important. This is an important option. But it's okay. We have a liquid. For example, one thing you avoid by simulating at a much higher resolution and not using subdivisions is these kind of blobs. This is produced because we have a low resolution simulation and we are subdividing the result. So you are going to get a fluid more blobby fluid. So let's reset this and let's check the preset tab. We can enable presets. I'm not exactly sure how the stack works, so for the time being I'm just selecting one preset and applying the preset to the fluid. So it's pretty cool. The presets are really good. I really like all of them, and they come with material and everything, so it's great. Looks like metal remesh. Yeah, exactly. Looks like metal remesh. But I think metal remesh is better than subdividing the simulation from a low resolution. Hey Ryan, he's the developer from Flip Fluid Simulator. Not as convenient as in MantaFlow, but a workaround for open boundaries in the Flip Fluid add-ons. Yeah, that's true. That's true. A solution could be... I didn't think about it. It's totally true. We can do this just in the border of the domain. And we can duplicate and duplicate, and let's configure this as flip fluid outflow. Remove fluid, enable, okay. Flip fluid outflow, flip fluid outflow, and flip fluid outflow. And this will make the fluid to be erased when it collides, when it's going to collide with the domain. So you are totally right. This is a good solution. We don't always need the feature. We need workarounds to be able to do our work. So this is completely valid, I think. So let me hide this. Hide this, and that's it. So let's go with presets. As I've been seeing, and now that I know that Ryan is looking at me, please forgive me if I say anything silly about the add-on, and correct me, please, if I say anything wrong. But I really like the presets from the Flip Fluid Simulator. It saves you a lot of time. So the materials are pretty cool, and I really like the caramel preset. It is just like caramel. So you pick the material you want, you add to a stack, and it's not going to just put the visual material. It's going to configure the liquid so it behaves as this fluid. So I have this, so I apply it, and if I go to the grid resolution, I can see that it has changed. This is because the preset changed it. So let me read. Hello, aprendiste tu maestro de nada, Alberto. Scorpion, but with metable remesh, you can unfortunately get as fine detail, I think, as with the fruit remeshers. Remesh blobby in any case. Well, yes, but you can use many tricks with the metal remesh. By the way, I really love the metal remesh. But you can use smooth, you can use Laplacian smooth. You can use different tricks to extract more detail, more fluid detail from the remesh. But of course, the remesher of the simulator is going to be always better. I think it's not because the measure itself, but because all the information it can have, and especially all the resolution it can have. So of course it's going to be better in the end, or at least more detailed. So I just pick the preset, and if I come here, I have this. I can see that this changed, and I can go to Flip Fluid World, and you can see the viscosity is now enabled and at a value of 4. So we can bake this, and let's go check MantaFlow. 64%. Let's pause the simulation. So it's more calm. Okay, so at first sight, as I said, MantaFlow is slower than Flip Fluids, and for simpler scenes, MantaFlow is, I think MantaFlow is slower than Flip Fluids. But we will check what happens with default settings in the glass scene in a moment. So it's calculating time remaining. Why? Because I am at 300 resolution. Let's stop this. I don't want this resolution. Come on. I think it has to calculate the first frame before it can stop. It's safe to quit Blender, but I don't want to quit Blender. Meanwhile, we can open the other scene. I mean, we haven't, of course. So let me check. This is okay. And now let's go to water glass flip. So here we have the Flip Fluid Simulator simulation done, and I can pick the glass of water. And one thing I noticed, Altai, is that the playback of the meshes in MantaFlow is much faster than the playback of the meshes of Flip Fluid Simulator. I'm not sure why, and I don't think the amount of polygons is different. I don't think it's a problem either, because usually when we have a correct result, we bake the simulation to Alembic and we use the Alembic cache. So we ignore the actual simulator result. But it's slower. Okay, and this result, it's stable, it's okay, it's correct, but I had to crank up several settings. For example, I have to enable adaptive time stepping, I have to enable minimum sub-steps to 2, and I have to sacrifice a bit of precision, enabling a bit more of the peak simulator, of the peak engine. I'm not sure how to call it, but the peak system. And I have to lower the safety factor to 1. And we're going to see why in a minute. Let me configure this to this one, and let me check the default settings. By the way, is there a way to reset this to default? I don't think so. Well, if I press here, yeah, it's okay. Great. So reset to default, this disable, and that's okay. What happens if you just move the domain in case you need to move your glass of water through the scene? I recall you mentioned you need a big domain covering everything there. Yeah, I'm not sure about Flip Fluid Simulator. I'm sure about MantaFlow. You cannot move the domain. In fact, you can move the domain, but it's not going to be taken into account during the simulation. The domain is set up at the beginning of the simulation, and that's it. It's a volume. In fact, it's not a real box. They are just coordinates. So it's set at the beginning of the simulation, and that's it. So for that, we need an adaptive domain, like the same adaptive domain that we have in the smoke simulator in 2.79. And MantaFlow has some kind of adaptive domain for smoke already, but right now I think it's disabled. Sebas has to re-enable it because he encountered some problems with his new cache system. And with adaptive domain, we can have a much bigger domain and we don't have any problem. In the case of Flip Fluid simulators, I'm not sure. In fact, Ryan, if you are watching this, if you are still watching this, please answer Scorpion this question, because I think this is the same case. The domain is set up at the beginning of the simulation, and after that, any transformation to the domain is not taken into account. It's my understanding. We can test this later. So, Paddle is here. Hey, maybe it's a silly question. No question is silly, please. But in Flip Fluids, can you make like a pretty big box as a domain, like the cover of whole scene, in order to be close to no boundaries? Yeah, you can cover the whole scene, but this is one of the flaws of the Flip simulators. That if I go and let me just configure this. Let's imagine that I have this domain, okay? And I cover the whole floor and the whole scene. Cool. But now let me enable the Flip Fluid domain. And let me go to the back. And since I have, yeah, let me disable this domain. And now, I think, now it should work. This is the resolution I'm going to have, okay? It's a pretty low resolution. So how can I get a correct simulation, a correctly looking simulation for such a big scene? Okay, I can go here and I can crank this up to 1000, for example. And this is going to give me, for this glass of water, a more or less medium resolution simulation. But the computation time for this kind of domain is going to be huge. So this is the problem with the Flip simulators, that you have to define a static domain. And Ryan confirmed what I said. You have to define a static domain at the beginning of the simulation, and that's it. So it's okay, it's great for some types of simulations, for example, for a river that you need for a shot, or for some contained simulations, they are the best way to simulate things. But on the contrary, if you need a glass to move a glass along a room, around a room, it's better to use SPH particles, because you are not constrained to a volume. You can move the particles wherever you want. So this is the reason, because I always say that it's not that the flip systems are the best systems. They are the best system for some situations, and the SPH, the good old SPH particles, especially the Blender ones that are pretty stable, they are the best simulation system for other situations. The only problem with the Blender particles right now in 2.79 is that we don't have a proper remesser. But with fracture modifier we have it. And in Blender 2.81, that is when Scorpion is going to implement fracture modifier, right? We will get a pretty awesome remesser. Meanwhile, you can use the fracture modifier branch, and you can download this compilation for Windows to play with it. It's pretty cool. Needs more RAM than the universe with such a huge domain in high res. Exactly. It's not RAM. It needs RAM and time, both things. So it cannot be done. This kind of thing cannot be done. Usually, if you have different fluids in the scene, you are going to set up different domains in the scene. Wow, I have my voice killing me. So let's go back to our domain. Come on, give me my domain. Okay. So now we can check if this is our correct domain. Yeah, it's okay. Imagine having this resolution. In fact, we can go here and we can lock the cell size, and now we can scale the domain, and the cell size is going to be maintained. The detail is going to be maintained. For example, I can do this and cover the whole floor, and this is my resolution. And if I need more height, and this is my resolution. This may take ages to simulate and a lot of RAM. So it's okay. Let's go for the next thing. Now we have this, and I think I resetted everything to defaults. Yeah, everything is default, so I can delete and I can simulate. Save and simulate. And as you can see, this is already faster, right? We can go here, but here you have the problem. Let's leave this up to the frame number 5. At the moment, the remesser is not yet in 2.8 fracture modifier branch. I want to keep it from now separate in case a review may happen. Okay, but we have it in the Blender 2.79, and so far the fracture modifier branch for Blender 2.79 is pretty good to work with SPH particles. That is I think this is the main target for the remesser for me. I know it has many more uses for fracture modifier. Okay, that's enough. So this is the problem. The liquid is going out. So the default settings are not precise enough to be able to contain the liquid inside the glass of water. So what is the first thing we have to do in this case? We have to check how voxelized are our obstacles. So we enable obstacle, and we go to, okay, let me disable this. And let's reset the simulation and bake again. So, and that's it. The glass of water is correctly, I can hide this, is correctly voxelized. It has no holes. And let me disable the grid. I don't need the grid. It has no holes. It's a solid glass of water. I can even hide the floor. It's a solid glass of water, but no matter what, the liquid is going through the glass. Let me show the fluid surface. The liquid is not being contained inside the glass. And this is because, yes, we need more detail in our simulation. And this is why when we enable these settings, let's check without changing the peak flip ratio. And I know for a fact, we can try it with 2, but I know for a fact that I need 1 for a stable simulation. So reset in this case. And let's check this one, and it cancelled. Okay, 100 resolution, and let's bake at the same time. Well, wait, not at the same time, because I want to check this speed. Here you have it. We still have liquid going out of the glass. So we need to crank it up a bit more. Let's reset it. And let's configure this to 1. We can try it this way. And as you can see, now it's a bit slower. It's similar to MantaFlow. But the simulation is stable. So you get a perfectly stable simulation. The fluid is not going through the glass of water, and everything is behaving correctly. And in this case, I didn't have to crank up the peak flip ratio. It's pretty cool. We can disable this. And in this case, the obstacle is behaving better, I think, because it's correctly colliding with the glass of water. And this mesh is behaving also pretty fast. It's cool. Okay. So now I'm going to stop this simulation, and I'm going to increase it a bit more. It's at 65. Let's put up 150, and let's bake it. And let's apply a preset. For example, sparkling water. Add to stack, apply. Let's simulate 150 and 1. Let's bake. Okay, let's go here. And now I want to simulate this, and let's go to MantaFlow. And since in MantaFlow we can do the simulation in different steps, we can slowly configure the aspect of our simulation. And this is different from Flip Fluids, because in Flip Fluids you simulate everything at once, while in MantaFlow you can simulate by phases. So let's imagine I'm happy with my simulation. It's okay. Let me hide this, and now I want to hide my flip particles, and I want to calculate my mesh. And typically in MantaFlow and inside Flip Fluid, in both simulators, the mesh calculation is faster than the actual simulation. So I can enable speed vectors, I want to save the scene, and I can bake the mesh. Remember that right now, my CPU is at 48%, 56, and I'm doing a meshing with MantaFlow and 2 simulations with Flip Fluid. This is pretty amazing. This is something you can only do with Threadripper. Is this being simulated? Yes. Let's check what do we have here. Okay, it's pretty cool. And now here, it's caramel. It's amazing. I really love this preset. I really love this preset. It's actual caramel. And even while we are simulating, I'm going to do a crazy thing. I'm going to configure an environment texture. Let's open it. I have one here from the Blender Cloud, this one, and why not? The streaming is not dying because I'm streaming from a different computer, so let's try. Let's see what happens if I render this while simulating. Wow, amazing! I can render and stream at the same time. And as you can see, the preset, it's pretty good. I really love it. And this is a pretty low resolution. It's a 100 resolution, nothing more. And let's try this one. Background, veranda, it's already configured. Amazing. Amazing. And the materials are pre-configured, so, and they are pretty good. They are principal shaders that are correctly configured, and they look pretty cool. If we want, we can go here and we can pick the mesh, and we can use smooth, for example, factor 1, factor of 8, or 10, or 20, or 50, whatever I want, and then I get more smooth surface. And we can enable the glass of water. Let's see if we have another frame. Up to frame 6. Okay, frame 6. I think I don't have frame 6 simulated. Oh yes, but the volume is too low. Why is that happening? Wow, this is a big loss of volume. I will have to test this later. This shouldn't happen. But here we have our glass of water. It's not filled up. Let's stop and configure this back to 100. It could be because the modifier, yeah, maybe. Let's go back to 100. Maybe because it's simulating, I broke something modifying the mesh with the modifier while it's being simulated. Probably my fault. Let's bake and let's go to MantaFlow. So in MantaFlow we have a bug right now in the Blender 2.8 build. That is that we cannot see the mesh in solid mode, just in wireframe or in look and depth. And as you can see, there is something weird going on here. I have to talk to Sebas about this. This shouldn't happen. But anyways, it's pretty cool. We should also smooth out the surface, calculate, simulate this with a higher resolution, etc. And let's finish with this one. It's pretty cool. I really love this. Viscosity in flip fluids is awesome. So, for a final thought about this, which is better, MantaFlow or Flip Fluid Simulator? Well, both of them. I think they are not exclusive. I mean, Flip Fluid has some pretty good features. It's is being developed at a constant rate, and it doesn't depend on the evolution of Blender. So this is cool. This is good because it's independent from Blender. But at the same time, it lacks some features that we have in MantaFlow, and I think they have different set of features. So I don't think they are exclusive. I think they are both great flip fluid simulators, and that they should be used in different cases. If you need something like caramel or chocolate, for example, I think it's better to use Flip Fluid Simulator. It's pretty cool. It's very, very cool. But if you need to mix, for example, smoke with liquids, or if you need to, I don't know, to do other kind of liquids, you can use Flip Fluid and you can use MantaFlow. And in the end, MantaFlow is going to be included inside Blender, in Vanilla Blender. So it's going to be included in Blender. You don't have to download a different build, you don't have to download an add-on, you don't have to do anything. It's going to be inside Blender. So it's going to be great to have MantaFlow inside Blender. But as I said, they are not exclusive. I think they both are great simulators. Flip Fluid, it's a liquid fluid simulator, and MantaFlow, it's a flip, liquid, and gaseous fluid simulator. Okay, and that's it. Once I release fluid effects, real-time fluids, maybe compare them. Yeah, of course, why not? I really love simulators of any kind. I really love physics, so yeah, of course. So now we are 1 hour and a quarter, so I'm going to pass to the next theme of the night. While this is simulating, I'm going to leave this simulating in the back. Let's resume the MantaFlow. Let's stretch the computer a bit. And as you can see, Flip Fluids in this case is behaving better than MantaFlow. MantaFlow is more stable with lower settings, but Flip Fluids with a bit higher settings is behaving better because the collision is perfect, while in MantaFlow we have this weird collision here. I'm not sure why. So the next topic of the night is caustics in cycles. Okay, caustics in cycles. Can we do caustics in cycles as it is right now? Let me open another Blender. And let's configure this so it can be seen. Okay. And yes, I'm going to stop the simulations because I need the power to render. Let's pause data and let's pause the simulation. Okay. Okay, goodbye, MantaFlow. Okay, goodbye, Flip Fluid Simulator. I think I closed all my blenders. No, okay. So I'm going to use the water glass flip from Flip Fluids, but not this one. I'm going to use water glass Manta. It doesn't have any simulation inside. It's just a glass of water. And as you can see right now, there is a light coming from the side, and we are not seeing any kind of caustics, right? So we can increase the sampling of the preview to 200. We can even go to the system, enable this, enable this. Let's check, maybe faster. And we can limit this to be faster. Okay, so we cannot see any kind of caustics. And Cycles is a physically correct engine. Physically correct engine. Why are not seeing why we are not seeing any kind of caustics? Because we are removing them. With what? With for starters, with filter glossy. If we lower this to 0.1, for example, we start to see some caustics. But we need a lot of time to get clean caustics from this, right? So we can increase this to 1000 samples, and we can lower this to 0.02 and increase the clamp indirect to 25, so we get more power. And here we get some kind of caustics, of correct caustics. If we, of course, if we remove refractive caustics, we don't get anything. But then we get a scene with a lot of noise, and in this case, this is fast because this is a viewport and this is small, and we can configure a camera. Let's go here. Let's put a camera. Okay, and full HD, sorry, full HD, and let's configure this to 1000 samples, and performance 16, that's okay. So let's render this. It's a super simple scene at 1000 samples. And there is barely any caustics. We have a bit of effect here. And this is with an HDRI. So let's try in a more complex situation for caustics. That is, we are going to remove our HDRI. So disconnect. And let's put this value, strength of 0.2. Okay, we don't have any light, and let's use a point. And this point, we are going to reduce this, and there we have some caustics. 1 centimeter, 0.5 centimeters. So here we should be seeing some pretty cool caustics, but we are just seeing noise. And let's pick this, and let's try to increase this. Well, maximum transparency, maximum bounces. Let's crank up this glossy to I don't know, 32, for example. But we just get noise. we can try to render this. We just get noise. And bear in mind that this is with 64 threads plus a 1080, a GTX 1080, and we just get noise. So there is a trick that we can use. That is, we can change path tracing to branched path tracing, and if we crank this up, the diffuse sampling, we crank this up to 52, and the anti-aliasing to, I don't know, this. Let's check what we have here. This is slow, but check this. This is not a final scene configuration, of course, but check this. We have actual caustics. This is much more realistic, right? Much more realistic. But we still have a lot of noise, and this is still too slow. So how can we improve this? At least, how can we try to extract a caustic pass for a scene to compose it later? And this is slow. We can try. Let me reduce this to 50%. We don't need full HD. With the denoising, and we can render this. It's pretty cool to be streaming and be able to talk to you guys and not having the streaming die. Okay, this with the denoising is not enough. We need more detail. It's not enough. So, what can we do to improve this much more? We can use this. I hope you are aware about this DevTalk thread about the scrambling distance and Dithered Sobol. There is a lot of people here. You can see here one picture with caustics by Lord Odin, and you can see some guys that Adam Preisler did several studies about how scrambling distance and Dithered Sobol is helping him to accelerate the render, and he's getting a huge difference in rendering. I mean, around 30%. It's what it is it is useful, because scrambling distance, I think 0.2, 0.1 is the maximum you want to use in a general scene. There are situations where you may use 0.01, but it's amazing. It's much faster with the scrambling distance. So you can go to graphical, and here you can have this build with a scrambling distance and Dithered Sobol. You can download it and test this exact thing that I'm going to do. So I have the build here, and let me save this, save as caustics. And if you test this, please, Alex, is my pleasure. If you test this, please go to DevTalk and post your results here, because we really want this to be implemented in master. I don't understand why this is not in master. It is not breaking anything, as I already stated in the previous English, in my previous English live streaming. So I can go here, water glass caustics, and I just have to enable a scrambling distance, but I'm going to enable just Dithered Sobol, so we can see the effect in the noise. Let me do a render just with Sobol. Let's press F12. This is the same as with the other. Let me check one thing. system. Okay. This is the same as with the other build, and of course, let me disable the denoising for the time being. This is exactly the same as 2.79 daily build or master. Okay, let's allow this to finish. And Pablo said in Blender chat that he has 3 megs per second, so he cannot do any kind of streaming from Patagonia. It's a pity. We'll miss you, Pablo. We want you back as soon as possible. So we get these caustics. This is not correct, okay? And this took 42 seconds. Let's go to slot 2 and let's enable Dithered Sobol. And let's try this again. So Dithered Sobol, what does is it creates a more uniform pattern in the noise. It's like the effect of a GIF with a low amount of colors. We can check with the previous version as soon as it finished. Now I'm drinking the water is created by the ice. Okay, let's compare. This is slot 1, slot 2, not too different, right? There's not too much of a difference here. And now let's go to enable scrambling distance. Let's go a bit further, 0.1, even 0.71 for this test. Slot 3. And here we can start to see some patterns. 0.01 is too much. Yeah, 0.01 is too much. But you can see that, well, we get like more defined areas. Ralph, this is the same thing that I talked about in my latest Spanish streaming. So you can see that we get more defined areas. We can increase this to 0.1. This is 35 seconds. Okay, so we were 42 seconds with Sobol, did the Sobol 43 seconds, and enabling this scramble distance 35 seconds. So let's go to 0.1 and slot 4. Let's press F12. So you can see this is much faster. I think we are going to 35 seconds too. That's it, 37 seconds. And we get more or less the same result than our 42 seconds result. Okay, now we can crank up this. Let's go to diffuse. I think we can go to 16 and we can go with this one to 112 or 24. No, let's leave it to 32. Let's go to slot 5. And now we are talking. Now we get a more uniform surface of caustics. And to get the actual caustic pass, we can disable the glass of water from the render. We can exclude it and get just the part we need. But of course, this is going to take longer than 45 seconds. But since the noise it's more uniform with Dithered Sobol than with Sobol, we are going to be able to apply the denoiser in a much better way. You will see in a minute. And scrambling distance benefits especially complex scenes. So simple scenes is not going to be too much. It's not going to get too much acceleration, but in complex scenes, it's amazing what scrambling distance can do. So let's denoise this with the optics denoiser. That, by the way, it's in its way to be released because right now it's not fully GPL compliant. So Remington Graphics is working on it. So, but I have the one of the betas, so we can run the optics denoiser, and here we get, come on, these caustics that are pretty awesome. I think they are pretty cool. So we can go and we can test with our slot 6. We can go back to 1.0 on Sobol and test the render time with this sampling. You already can see that this is slower. So we can get proper caustics working in cycles at reasonable times using Dithered Sobol and scrambling distance. And we can get them in our final render scenes, or we can get them as a pass, as a render pass, not as the final render scene. But to be able to get actual proper render times, we need scramble distance and Sobol, especially if we are in complex scenes. So please test this build and play with it and try different values with your production scenes. I think it's pretty important to show Brett different production scenes, not just sample scenes, example scenes like this one, because this is like a corner case, a special case that, okay, it can work, it can work, I don't know. But if you use an actual production scene and you test this at different render times, there is some base to benefit the possibility of including this in master. So we have 1 minute 26 seconds, 1 minute 14 seconds, but the feeling of noise, and it can be subjective, but I think this noise is much more uniform than this one. So it's going to give us a much better result. And this is just for caustics. I want to show you as a final scene, I want to show you one special scene I have here. It's a Lego scene. I downloaded it from a software, and I had help from loading to configure it, but it's pretty awesome. Let me this is the scene. Okay, so let me open it. This is what the scramble distance can do in conjunction with cycles when it's correctly used. Check this. 3, 2, 1, boom. Okay, boom. This is not working. Sorry. I saved this scene with several modifications. Let me open another one. I have this one that is the original, I think. Okay. 3, 2, 1, boom. Let me close this, and let me close this, and let me close this. Close this. And let me close this and check this. You know that this is practically real time, right? And this is thanks to scrambling distance and Dithered Sobol. That's it. And not just that. It's a scrambling distance, Dithered Sobol, and simplify and our ambient occlusion bounces. Exactly, cycling EV. But in the Spanish streaming, I got some questions about this, like the roof is open. Can you close it? Yes, of course. Let's close the roof. Let's duplicate this so we get more indirect lighting. And it's still fast, but we don't get proper illumination, right? It's too dull. So we can increase the AO bounces render to 2. And now we get a much proper illumination. Scramble distance needs a bit more time to be cleaned up. So we can reduce this to 64, and we can increase the scrambling distance to 0.1. And it's not as fast as before, but it's awesome. It's awesome. No, this is not optics denoiser. This is scrambling distance with Dithered Sobol. And by the way, let's check what Dithered Sobol means. You can see here that we get some kind of GIF effect, right? Let me allow me to disable Dithered Sobol and enable Sobol. And here you can see a non-uniform noise that is more similar to the noise we are used to. Right? You can see this one here. But if we enable Dithered Sobol, you can see that the pattern is more similar to the dithering of the GIF pictures. And this is easier for the denoiser to handle because the noise it's much more uniform, so you avoid having a lot of clouds. That is what happens with the denoiser. And you know that, let me check this. Let me go to the camera and let's render a frame of this. 64 samples. Let's render a frame of this. And this is rendered at 9, 10 seconds. What do you think about this? This is 10 seconds, okay? Let's disable scrambling distance and let's disable Dithered Sobol. And let's press render again. It's okay too. In fact, it's faster. No, 10 seconds. Okay. Let's lower the amount of AO bounces. Let's go to 2 and let's press render to 8. Okay, and here we get noise. This is 17 seconds. Magic, right? And let's go to Dithered Sobol, 0.1 as a scrambling distance, and slot 7. And it's 15 seconds. What scene do you think is cleaner? Let's check the roof. What do you think that has less noise. For me, it's clear that the result from Dithered Sobol is much better than the result from standard Sobol. It's much better, it's much cleaner. And if we go to higher samples count, we go to the slot 6, and let's go to 200 samples. No, 150 samples. I think we get a lot less noise, and I'm going to apply the denoiser here, the blender denoiser. Let me stop this, in fact. Let me enable denoising and just press render, because I want to show you the result with the denoiser. This is the denoiser with Dithered Sobol. Check the result here and here in the more difficult areas. Here, this is more or less clean. We have some weird effects here that could be solved with a bit more sampling. Okay, and let's go to slot 5. Let's disable scrambling distance. Let's enable Sobol, and let's render at the same sampling amount. Well, it's not bad, but I don't know if you can appreciate it here. But can you see that this surface is much more cleaner with, this is with Dithered Sobol, and this is with standard Sobol. It's much more cleaner. We have more clouds here. Do you see the difference? It's harder to see. Let me try another place. So, for example, this place, this area here, we can go. This is with a standard Sobol and without the scrambling distance, and this is with Dithered Sobol, and you can see that this line is much more defined than this line, and this is because the distribution of the noise is much more uniform, so it tends to give us less smoke, less clouds. So the standard denoiser can work better, faster on uniform patterns with Dithered Sobol creates. It's what I think, and it's what Theory Studios does. In Theory Studios, they use Dithered Sobol and they use scrambling distance in practically every project they do, and they mix it with the denoiser. And for me, it's clear that it creates a much cleaner result. I don't know how can I show you another effect, but you can see here, for example, we have some shadow here, and then we don't have anything here, and then we get some shadow here, so we have some areas, but with Dithered Sobol, we get a much more uniform result. It's more, it's softer. It's softer. It's just we get less clouds. Let's go to repeat this render one last time, but with less samples, with 64 samples, and Sobol and without the scrambling distance. And of course, this works flawlessly with optics denoiser. Even less samples, I think. Well, you can see here the clouds, but I'm going to do with 48 samples. I want something pretty exaggerated. Okay, here we have a lot of clouds, right? And of course here, let's try this slot 3 and 14 samples, scrambling distance 1. This is going to look ugly, but I want the Dithered Sobol effect, 0.2. So, for example, this place, it's ugly because we are at 42 samples, but you can see the difference. I hope you can see the difference. This is much more uniform with scrambling distance at Dithered Sobol than this. We have clouds. We have a lot of clouds here. And this is much more cleaner. This is much more clean. And I think even the, yeah, even the roof. I don't know, it's scrambling distance and Dithered Sobol make things cleaner. And you can see this here, for example, for the Denoiser with 48 samples. You can say that this is not perfect, of course, we are at 48 samples, but this is much more clean than the standard Sobol and without the scrambling distance. This is much more clean. Check the water also, check the reflections. They are much more defined in this with Dithered Sobol and scrambling distance than this one. We have a lot of white clouds here, while here we have more defined reflections. So in general, I think this is better for everyone. This doesn't break anything. Please try this. Post your results in DevTalk, use production scenes, complex scenes in different situations with volumes, with hair, with whatever you want, so we can show Brett's that we want this in master, because it's going to help us to accelerate results. Let me show you one picture. I will post the picture I'm going to show you. I will post this picture in it's from, I think it's this one. And combine not this render layer. This is scene. Okay. This scene is rendered with a scrambling distance and Dithered Sobol at 800 samples, and it took 25 minutes to be rendered. To get a similar result, and I used Denoiser here, to get a similar result without the scrambling distance and Dithered Sobol, I need to render it at 1400 samples, and it takes around 45 minutes. So it's more or less 40% faster with a scrambling distance and Dithered Sobol. So please, we need this in master. We need this in master. And that's it for today. We are 1 hour and 48 minutes. That's enough. I'm sick. My voice is going to kill me, and I have to go to rest a bit. So thank you for watching me, and I hope you enjoyed this. If you enjoyed this, please press the like button, subscribe to the channel, press the little bell button, because I usually don't warn about the live streamings with 1 day of time ahead. So just press the little bell button to be aware about the live streamings, and that's it. See you in the next streaming. Bye.